Mom, I'm flying to New York with Gary Marshall. We're going to see Richard Gere. So off we go. We go to his apartment, and which I also thought was weird. Like, why would it be okay for me to know where he lives now?
I don't remember Gary. I just remember the girl.
The Globe appeared to be in a state of hypnosis when Pretty Woman debuted in theaters in 1990. The prostitute was played by Julia Roberts. Together, Vivian Ward and Richard Gere, who played businessman Edward Lewis, crafted one of the most iconic romantic tales ever portrayed on film. However, what transpired behind the camera was just as magical as the narrative. Julia Roberts first shared a secret she had concealed for decades at the age of 57. Since the well-known piano scene, she had harbored a secret passion for Richard. And that emotion turned into my life's greatest secret. Julia described the most authentic backstage experiences in a recent interview. She disclosed playful jokes, unintentional looks, and an inexplicable flutter between two people who live in a fantasy world, but understand each other better than anybody else. Since Richard was like a brother or father figure to me, I made an effort to hide that emotion. I was afraid to admit it. I believe it's time to tell now. Ever pondered the true events that took place behind the scenes of Pretty Woman? Was there ever a genuine spark between Richard Gere and Julia Roberts? In today's film, let's examine the life of the stunning Julia Roberts. When 21-year-old Julia Roberts entered a tiny New York apartment in 1989, she saw 40-year-old Richard Gere, who was charming but apprehensive about starring in the film Pretty Woman. As a newcomer to Hollywood, Julia's hands trembled when she handled the script. She subsequently told a close friend, her voice still eager, "Oh my God, this is Richard Gere, the man-for-man officer and a gentleman. How am I going to convince him?" Unfazed, Julia scrawled on a sheet of paper. Richard, skeptical of the risky script, looked at the young girl with curiosity. Sliding it over the table, he said, "Please say yes." Richard, feeling her powerful energy, burst out laughing. Thinking, this girl has something special, he accepted the part. They became fast friends on the Pretty Woman shoot. Still naive, Julia frequently fretted about the moments, particularly the well-known piano scene. She flushed as she filmed, whispering, "Richard, what should I do to not look silly when you touch me?" Richard winked with the composure of a seasoned performer. "Let me take the lead, please. Simply be Vivian." It was an impromptu moment when Gere's Edward's hand went onto Julia Vivian's clothing. Julia's clumsy on-screen chuckle was genuine, and she was unaware beforehand. They sang, "Don't Let Me Be Misunderstood," and laughed like two newly reunited friends as they wrapped up the day of filming. A lot of people are unaware that improvisation was the only thing that gave rise to the piano scene. Richard Gere recalled, "We just made the scene on a whim. Gary told me, play a sad song." So Richard sat down, letting his hands glide naturally over the keys, letting the music tell the story instead of dialogue. His playing gave Edward a rare depth, a lonely man, rich in emotion beneath his cold exterior. The scene ended with a kiss between Edward and Vivian right on the piano. Sweet yet passionate, becoming one of the most memorable moments in film history. Fans rarely know that Richard Gere is not only a talented actor, but also a true musician. He can play piano, guitar, and trumpet. And in Pretty Woman, that skill was fully showcased. In the scene where Edward plays piano in the hotel bar, it's no longer acting, but the real him. The melody comes from genuine emotion, making the character softer and more humane. This small detail helped audiences understand that Edward was not just a cold businessman, but a man carrying deep loneliness. Scenes continued to unfold, and Richard often teased Julia. "You'll have to make me laugh more if you want to survive this scene." Julia squinted and replied humorously, "You'll have to take responsibility for my smile." You know, everyone on set watched them act, unable to look away. But what happened off camera was even more impressive. Gary Marshall later confirmed that the bond between Julia and Richard was the magic of Pretty Woman. He said, "They breathed life into the characters to the point that I knew I couldn't let the movie have a sad ending." Screenwriter J.F. Elton agreed. He once said that if the original cast choices, like Al Pacino and Michelle Pfeiffer, had been selected, the film might have taken a completely different, darker, and more dramatic direction. But with Julia and Richard, everything changed. Their energy made the story warm and human. Elton recounted that even from auditions, he felt the special connection between the two. You could see it, feel it, even when they were just talking. He said when they were together, no one could imagine a different ending other than happiness. That's why Pretty Woman ended with love, a kiss, a piece of music, and hope that made audiences leave the theater smiling. Backstage wasn't always easy. Julia, new to the industry, sometimes felt pressure working with Richard, already a major star. "He has this terrifyingly calm style," Julia once joked to director Gary Marshall. "I panic, and he just glances at the script and knows it." But Richard was always there, gently guiding her through difficult scenes. Once, when Julia was tense about a fight scene between Vivian and Edward, Richard pulled her aside. "Julia, you're the star. Just trust yourself." Those words fueled her, and Julia delivered a performance that earned applause from the crew. Julia and Richard often sat together on prop chairs, discussing roles, jazz, or sometimes just trivial daily stories. One afternoon, Richard asked, "If you weren't an actor, what would you do?" Julia smiled and shrugged. "Maybe wander the world, finding stories to tell. But you know, I'm afraid to go alone." Richard looked at her and nodded gently. "Sometimes going alone is how you find yourself." No one could have guessed that on opening day, Pretty Woman would not only touch millions of hearts, but also change Julia's career. She won a Golden Globe, received Oscar and BAFTA nominations, and became a superstar overnight. The film grossed over $463 million worldwide, breaking all romantic comedy records and becoming a cultural icon of the 1990s. Time passed, and Julia quickly became a global star after Pretty Woman, but they stayed in touch. Julia once told a close friend, "Richard is the only person who makes me laugh without acting and cry without fear of judgment." Though there was no romantic love, the bond between them remained persistent, quiet, and warm. When Runaway Bride was produced in 1999, Julia worried. "Will we still have the same chemistry as before?" Richard smirked. "If not, I'll make you redo it until it works." Their chemistry remained intact, and the romantic scenes became so genuine that the crew often had to stop filming because they couldn't stop laughing. On set, they played like children. Julia pretending to run from a kiss, shouting, "Ike, you won't catch me!" Richard laughed, chasing her across the field, making the crew burst into laughter. They didn't just act. They lived the characters, and their chemistry still melted audiences' hearts. Even if the movie was criticized as not as good as Pretty Woman, "We weren't trying to outshine that shadow," Julia said at a dinner after filming. "All we wanted was to enjoy ourselves." There was more to their relationship than just films. In real life, they maintained a close friendship. Julia frequently contacted Richard to inquire about his family and life. Julia sent a gift basket filled with toys along with a note to Richard and his wife, Alejandra, in 2019 when they welcomed a boy. "Well done, young father. You should not teach the boy to play the piano." Richard took his wife and child to dinner with Julia and her husband, Danny Motor, while they were in New York for a meeting. "She still has the same brilliance as when I initially met her." With dazzling eyes, Richard told Alejandra. Julia made a joke. "After all these years, you still make me blush, Richard." After rumors and public pressure nearly shattered Julia, Richard called in a serious tone. "Don't allow anyone to undervalue you, Julia." Julia responded, "Thank you. Without you, I would have collapsed." They only needed presence, understanding, and complete trust, no romantic love or status. Richard once claimed that he knew Julia was the person he wanted in his life, even if not as a lover, when he first met her. "There were days I just wanted to cry loudly, and Richard would just sit quietly, hand me a cup of tea, and be silent with me," Julia said, adding, "But I knew he always understood me." That bond turned into an enduring consolation and spiritual pillar amid the glitzy yet brutal world of show business. Celebrity wealth and popularity never weakened their relationship as they grew older. Stated Julia, "With him beside me, I feel like the 19-year-old girl I used to be." They went out together, attended events, or simply had quiet dinners, talking about ordinary things. Nobody else was able to participate. They got back together on The Today Show in 2015 for Pretty Woman's 25th anniversary celebration. Julia entered. Richard laughed aloud and said, "And you're still Vivian." He held Richard and said, "You're still my Edward, even with gray hair." Richard smiled back. Julia Roberts, now 57, did a rare interview. "I think it's time not to hide it anymore. I now have a husband, children, and a family, and I want to tell the true story of my young feelings." Julia's voice was warm and nostalgic, bringing back memories of filming Pretty Woman. She looked directly into the camera when a reporter asked her about their previous romance. Julia's pulse would race whenever Richard Gere showed up during the early days on site. But Julia quickly discovered one thing that made her both fond and terrified. She recalled, "I remember a scene where he walked into the room. The light hit his hair, and I wondered why my heart was beating so fast. I had never felt anything like it." To her, Richard resembled a brother, or perhaps a father. "I believed that everything would be destroyed if I came clean now. I was afraid." Julia would occasionally sit in the caravan with a piece of paper in her hand, write something she wanted to convey to Richard, and then rip it up. Richard once brought pizza to the team during a late-night shoot, she remembered. "I wanted to tell him that I liked him, but my heart was pounding." Then she simply bowed her head and smiled. "No, I am unable to. To me, he is like family." Actually, Julia had planned to confess at least 3 times, but she ultimately decided against it out of concern for the future of their priceless bond. When the two reunited during the Runaway bride filming, Julia experienced that flutter once more. She recounted in an interview, "There was a scene where he and I were on a boat, the wind blowing my hair, his eyes looking at me. I wanted to scream, but I bit my lip. I knew I couldn't cross that line. He's Richard, but in my eyes, he's always like a brother." Julia also remembered simple moments offset. Richard was often joking, telling funny stories, or remaining silent when Julia was sad. Once, when Julia worried about a difficult scene, Richard put his hand on her shoulder and said, "You'll be fine." Julia said to herself, "I'm here." Although he provides spiritual support, this emotion is too intimate to be classified as love. "I'm not brave enough." Those moments turned into regretful, nuanced, and lovely recollections. In an interview at age 57, Julia said, "Looking back now, I realized that feeling wasn't wrong, but indeed, I chose to cherish it in my own way. I kept it in my heart, and that helped me understand the value of a lasting friendship." She smiled as if to send a message. "I felt that flutter, but I also knew I needed to stop. And because of that, we are still friends today." Finally, Julia emphasized that it was the caution and respect for boundaries that made that feeling beautiful. It did not disappear but also caused no trouble. "I can act love on screen, but in real life, I learned to love by keeping a precious relationship intact. And I am happy because now we are friends, soulmates." Although Pretty Woman was a success and made Julia Roberts and Richard Gere 2 of Hollywood's biggest stars, few people know that initially Pretty Woman did not resemble a beautiful love story. The original script was titled 3,000 Dwast, named after the amount Edward paid Vivian for a week together. Julia once shared on The Graham Norton Show in 2023 that the first version of the film was much darker. In it, Vivian was a drug addict, and the ending was Edward leaving her on the street, throwing money and driving away. No love, no magic, just 2 lost people. But the fate of Pretty Woman changed when Disney bought the script and decided to turn it into a romantic comedy. That's when the tone of the story became warm and humane. However, even then, Julia Roberts almost lost her Destiny role. Drew Barrymore and Winona Ryder both auditioned but were deemed too young for the character. Finally, with her natural charm and radiant light, Julia captured the heart of the director and the world. Years later, recalling it, Julia said that the time filming Pretty Woman was one of the most beautiful memories of her life. "Everything was so innocent then," she said. "No one thought the movie would change my life." And indeed, the audience's love for Julia and Richard has remained intact for over 30 years. They reunited in Runaway Bride in 1999, like a gift for those who love that modern fairy tale. Looking back now, Julia smiled. "That magic is perhaps still somewhere, not just in the film, but in my life." Julia Roberts was only slightly older than the others auditioning, but it was her maturity and confidence that helped her win the Destiny role, and the rest, as they say, became history. However, she was not the only one who nearly missed the opportunity. Richard Gere, who later became Hollywood's dream prince, was not the first choice for Edward Lewis. Top stars like Sean Connery, Al Pacino, and Burt Reynolds were all invited to take the role. Al Pacino even auditioned with Julia but ultimately declined, feeling he was not right. Burt Reynolds, before his death in 2018, once joked that turning down Pretty Woman was one of the silliest mistakes of my life. While the lead couple stole the spotlight, many other famous faces also almost became part of the film. Demi Moore was once invited to play Kit, Vivian's best friend, but she declined. According to Heat magazine, not only Demi but also other actresses such as Laura Dern, Marisa Tomei, Lorraine Bracco, Mary Steenburgen, and Annabella Sciorra were also considered. Finally, the role went to Laura San Giacomo, who brought a strong, humorous, and lively Kit. The perfect complement to Julia. Many audiences were surprised to learn that Julia was only 22 when the film was released, while Richard Gere was 40. The 18-year age gap caused some concern, especially given their roles, a young woman and a successful businessman. But Julia, then 21 at her first meeting with director Gary Marshall, clearly set her boundary. "I will not be nude." Gary respected that. At such a young age, Julia knew how to protect herself, and that only made her stronger. On screen, she shone with confidence and a radiant smile, the kind that made the world recognize that no one else could be Vivian Ward but Julia Roberts. It's hard to believe the maturity Julia Roberts displayed in Pretty Woman. In her 20s, she had to act alongside a man nearly 2 decades older. But Julia not only held her ground, she completely shone. Her eyes, smile, and embodiment of the character made Vivian so vivid and real that viewers forgot the age gap between her and Richard Gere. Thanks to her confidence and naturalness, Julia secured her place as one of Hollywood's most talented actresses at the time. Nearly 10 years later, Julia and Richard had the chance to reunite in the romantic comedy Runaway Bride. 1999. Following the massive success of Pretty Woman, their return excited the film world. This time, the 18-year age gap was no longer controversial. Julia, then 31, was experienced and steady in her craft, while Richard, 49, still retained his charming allure. They played Maggie Carpenter, a woman who habitually runs away from weddings, and Ike Graham, a journalist who had written critical articles about her. Fate amusingly brought them together. And then naturally, they fell in love again. Unlike Pretty Woman, Runaway Bride had a lighter, more family-friendly tone. The film was rated PG instead of R as before. This time, Julia played a mature woman with her own story, emotions, and voice. No longer about power or money, the story revolved around love, understanding, and second chances. This change made the audience feel closer and more empathetic toward the characters. And once again, the chemistry between Julia and Richard made every frame come alive. Audiences were delighted to see the two beloved stars reunited. Their combination retained all its charm as if no time had passed since Pretty Woman. Instead of focusing on the age gap, viewers simply enjoyed the sense of magic returning. Interestingly, in both films, many scenes were improvised, and those unscripted details left an unforgettable mark. One of the most iconic scenes in Pretty Woman is when Edward gives Vivian an expensive necklace, then suddenly slams the box, making Julia laugh genuinely. Few know that this was entirely Richard Gere's improvisation. Julia's pure laughter was not acting. It was a natural reaction. Director Gary Marshall loved the moment so much that he decided to keep it in the final cut. The necklace Julia held was worth $250,000, and a security officer always stood next to the director to protect the precious piece. Another scene that made the audience laugh was when Vivian dropped a snail in a fancy restaurant. The waiter caught it and calmly said, "This happens all the time." In reality, the snail was not dropped by Julia, but thrown by director Gary Marshall to ensure perfect timing. He loved the moment so much that he reused the line in The Princess Diaries. For him, Pretty Woman was more than a film. It was a cherished memory full of small details that only those involved could fully appreciate. It was precisely those details and unplanned moments that gave Pretty Woman its soul. From unexpected laughter and accidental glances to soft music playing in the night, everything merged into a cinematic miracle. And even after decades, people still remember Julia Roberts and Richard Gere not just as actors, but as two perfect pieces of an immortal love story. Interestingly, Richard Gere recently excited fans by revealing that Pretty Woman, the classic film that touched millions of hearts, could still have a sequel. In an interview with People, he said he is willing to return as Edward Lewis, but only with a truly excellent script. "It all depends on the story," he said. "If the script is good, I will participate." More than 3 decades have passed since Edward and Vivian kissed on screen, ending with a smile and the song It Must Have Been Love playing in the background. Audiences have always wondered what happened next. But according to Gere, only with a script deep enough to continue exploring the characters would the story be worth telling further. While fans eagerly await a sequel, Julia Roberts has a different perspective. In an interview with The Guardian in 2018, she said that Pretty Woman cannot be remade in today's context. Julia said, "So much has changed in society and the film industry. That movie couldn't possibly exist in the same way, in my opinion. In 1990, it was thought bold to tell the tale of a Los Angeles prostitute who fell in love with a wealthy businessman. However, Julia thinks that people would see it differently in the modern era. She did, however, add that this does not lessen the affection that people have for the movie. Julia considered her own accomplishments with humility as well. She revealed in the same interview that Pretty Woman's popularity was due to more than just skill. Turning that opportunity into something positive requires both good fortune and the capacity to remain grounded. In addition to bringing her notoriety, the movie was a turning moment in her life that made her realize how important it is to persevere in her work. Julia stated in a different interview with Grazia that it is really challenging to bring vintage films into the present day. Pretty Woman, in her opinion, is unique because it is deeply rooted in the environment, culture, and spirit of the time period in which it was produced. Julia and the audience both have strong feelings for Pretty Woman, even though she thinks a sequel is unlikely. As a testament to romance and the idea that love may blossom in unexpected places, the tale of Vivian and Edward's love endures. Richard Gere once said at the Venice Masterclass, "When we made that film, no one thought it would succeed. We were just making a small film with a wonderful director named Gary Marshall. Yet that small thing went on to make history. So what is the journey and life of the beautiful woman Julia Roberts like? How is she living now after more than 3 decades of the film's success? Let's find out." Julia Fiona Roberts was born on October 28, 1967 in Smyrna, Georgia, into a family with a strong artistic background. Her father, Walter Grady Roberts, was an actor and founder of a theater workshop, while her mother, Betty Lou Bradamus, was both a librarian and an actress and drama teacher. As the youngest of 3 siblings, Julia grew up among acting rehearsals and stage stories, but initially she lacked confidence in her own acting abilities. Her brother, Eric Roberts, also pursued a film career, which made Julia realize early on that this profession was both captivating and harsh. After graduating high school, Julia moved to New York to seek opportunities in acting close to her older sister. She began taking acting classes and tried her hand at many auditions. Her first role appeared in the film Firehouse in 1987. But it was not until Mystic Pizza 1988 that Julia truly caught the attention of critics and the public. The film, which told stories of adolescence and first love, showcased her natural and charming acting ability. The big turning point came when Julia joined Steel Magnolia's 1989 cast, playing Shelby, a role that won her the Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actress. But it was Pretty Woman, 1990, with the role of Vivian Ward alongside Richard Gere, that transformed her into a global star. The film was not only a box office success, but also propelled Julia to the top ranks of Hollywood, making her a cinematic icon and a representative of charm, allure, and strength. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, Julia continuously proved her talent through films such as Sleeping with the Enemy, 1991, My Best Friend's Wedding, 1997, Runaway Bride, 1999, and Erin Brockovich, 2000, a role that earned her the Academy Award for Best Actress and made her the first actress to receive a $20 million salary for a single role. Despite her massive success, Julia has repeatedly shared the difficulties of building self-confidence and facing the harsh pressures of Hollywood. In recent years, Julia explored television with the series Homecoming 2018 on Amazon Prime, demonstrating her adaptability to different acting styles and receiving praise from critics alongside her dazzling career. Julia has always valued family. Her first husband was country singer Leo Lovett. They married in June 1993, just 3 weeks after they began dating. The wedding took place at St. James Lutheran Church in Marion, Indiana. Although their relationship was short-lived, they peacefully separated in March 1995 and maintained a friendship afterward. Later, Julia Roberts found the true love of her life. She married cinematographer Danny Moder on July 4, 2002, after meeting on the set of the film The Mexican in 2001. Their wedding was very private, held at Julia's ranch in Taos, New Mexico, with only vows exchanged, no fanfare, and no celebrity attendance. This marriage began under slightly controversial circumstances, as when they first met, Danny Moder was still in the process of divorcing his ex-wife, Vera Steinberg. The event caused public speculation and chatter about the timing of their relationship. However, Julia and Danny proved that their love was strong, overcame all the noise, and built a happy and peaceful home. The couple has 3 children, including twins Hazel Patricia and Phineas Walter, born in 2004, and son Henry Daniel, born in 2007. Julia keeps her family life private, limiting media access so her children can grow up in a peaceful environment. Rare family photos are received with appreciation by the public, as they seldom reveal their private life. In raising her children, Julia is very serious about limiting technology. She and her husband do not allow their children to use phones during meals and have set up a charging station in the house to control device usage. Julia once recounted that her daughter Hazel gave up her phone after watching the film Stand By Me, realizing that meaningful conversations could be hindered by over-reliance on electronic devices. Despite being a famous star, Julia has never let fame overshadow her role as a mother. She balances discipline and love, always placing family first. Both parents often participate together in outdoor activities and travel and strive to create meaningful experiences for their children. This balance helps the family maintain long-lasting connection and happiness. At 57, Julia Roberts still maintains her charm and admirable presence. She continues to participate in major film projects and maintains the image of a graceful and sophisticated Hollywood star. Recently, she appeared at the 2025 Caesar Film Festival in Paris, where she received an honorary award, and at the Venice Film Festival with the film After the Hunt 2025, a psychological work exploring cancel culture and ethics in education. Regarding health, Julia Roberts shared her journey of losing 16 lbs in 2024. She stated that this was not only about appearance, but also a lifestyle and overall health change. She began focusing more on healthy eating and maintaining a regular exercise routine. She also emphasized that maintaining health is to live long and well, especially to care for her family and children. On the topic of aging, Julia Roberts shared her perspective on accepting the aging process naturally. She stated that she ages with dignity, humor, and peace, and does not use cosmetic procedures such as facelifts or Botox. She is aware that in the entertainment industry, appearance is important, but she chooses to embrace the natural changes in her body. Julia Roberts' life and career have become iconic, not only because of her talent, but also because of the special relationships she has preserved throughout her life, including her enduring friendship with Richard Gere. They were never lovers, but their subtle flutter, quiet moments, and absolute trust created a friendship so beautiful it became legendary. Julia has learned that sometimes keeping a feeling in your heart, respecting boundaries, and cherishing a precious relationship can be even more valuable than romantic love. Now the question is, if Pretty Woman were remade today with a new cast, would it still succeed as before? Or perhaps a legend like that should remain as it is, a perfect gem of the era it was born in. Do you like this film and adore Julia Roberts? Leave your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other fascinating stories about Hollywood and legendary stars.